Today we are looking at the VulnHub virtual machine, Mr. Robot. The machine appears to be created by someone called Leon Johnson, and I remember doing it some time ago, and I thought, why not make a video about it and pop it on the channel. So, in order to get this box and play it, you need to download it from VulnHub. All you gotta do is go onto VulnHub, search for Mr. Robot. Now you'll see Mr. Robot there by Leon Johnson, the release date, and then you get your downloads or your torrents, and then once it's downloaded you can just import it into virtual machine as an appliance. So let's look at that. As you can see there, I've already imported it, but if you wanted to import it, all you do is go to File, Import Appliance, select File, go to your downloads wherever it is, and you should see it there, and then you can just open it and import it. Now, in order to play virtual boxes from VulnHub as well, you need to make sure your network settings are correct. So the first thing that I would recommend doing is going into File and going into Host Network Manager. Now you can see you have your host only Ethernet adapter and the IP address 192.168.56.1. That's your network address for hosts that are going to be configured to the host only network adapter. They'll be able to communicate with each other, but it just means that they're sort of in their own network. Then if you go to your Kali VM and go to your network settings, you want to switch that to host only adapter 2 and make sure that it's on the, well, take note of the name. Then you go to your second VM, go to the network on there as well, and then you want to go to host only adapter and make sure that it's the same name as the one that your Kali Linux instance is on. Okay, with your network adapter properly configured, what we want to do now is start both of the virtual machines, the target and your attack box. So just grab the box, click start, that will start the target, wait for that to spin up, and then you want to start your VM as well, and then wait for that to start up. So now that the virtual machine has booted up and we have our target machine up also, we need to determine what the IP address is of the target machine, but there are a number of tools that we can use to discover hosts on the network. For instance, one of them is netdiscover, and as you can see there, I'm doing sudo netdiscover -r, and then I'm doing the range of the host only adapter with a 0 at the end, followed by 24 to tell it that I want to scan the whole 255 hosts within the network. And as you can see there, the scan results have come back. It's found 3 hosts, .1, .100 and .101. So what we can also do just to verify these results is we can also do a mmap scan, and that will do a ping sweep of the whole network, again denoted with the CEDA address of 24. And once this comes back, which shouldn't take too long, it should tell us what hosts are online, and then that should be able to verify again what netdiscover's already told us. There you go, so you can see host 1 is online, host 100 is online, and host 101 is online. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to do an mmap scan in reverse order of host 101. I'm going to do a TCP scan of the most common ports. Brilliant. As you can see, we've got 3 services listening on this host. We have, well, we have 2 services, but SSH is closed, and then we've got port 80 and 443. They're both web server. One is encrypted, one's isn't. So this is likely our target ending 101. So now that we know the IP address of our target and we know that is running a web server, the next logical step is to go and check the web server out and see what's on there. So what we're going to do is we're just going to paste the IP address into the Kali browser and see what loads. Oh, it looks like there's a Linux terminal booting. As you can see, it's and sort of emulating a Linux terminal. It's quite a cool idea, and it's just displaying text. Hello friend, if you've come for a reason. You may not be able to explain it yet, but there's a part of you that's exhausted with the world, a world that decides where you work, who you see, and how you empty and fill your depressing bank account. Even the internet connection you're using to read this is costing you slowly, chipping away at your existence. There are things you want to say, soon I'll give you a voice, today your education begins. And it seems we've got some commands here as well, so if we check them out.
You are not free. You are owned. Owned by your job. Owned by the 1% of the 1%. Owned by debt. We are fsociety. Between June 18th and 20th, we will take back over $100,000 and give it to you, live on Twitch, to delete the debt that holds you hostage. All you need is a code.
So that was pretty cool. Then we got fsociety. Are you ready to join fsociety? Okay, inform. Question. Patriot, the American dream is a myth. Executive, everyone steals, that's how it works. Capitalist, give a man a gun and he'll rob a bank, give a man a bank and he'll rob the world. One of my favourite quotes, that is. You've been owned. But as you can see, there probably isn't a lot of information on here that's going to help us
I'm about to tell you is
hacking the
top
website.
secret. A conspiracy bigger than all of us. There's a powerful group of people out there that are secretly running the world. I'm talking about the guys no one knows about, the guys that are invisible. The top 1% of the top 1%, the guys that play God without permission.
So it does seem like we found Elliot's server. Hello friend. You don't know me, but I've been watching you. I know you feel like you have no voice. I know you feel trapped. I know you feel controlled, but I've been fighting for you. All of you. It's time to break free from our corporate masters. You've been a slave to their debt for too long. If you're ready to join me, enter your email address. I saw my keyboard out, man. Right, cool. So, yeah, there isn't much on there that's going to give us any information about how we progress further. So the next step in order to pwn this server, in my opinion, is to enumerate the website a bit more. Now, there are a lot of tools that we can use to do this. And one of them is, and it's a simple tool, but it's derb. Paste selection, and you can see that we're pasting it in, and all derb does is it brute forces subdirectories based on a word list. Now it's got its own word list built in. You can be more complex and add your own word list, but all you have to do is sudo derb boosh, and it will go through and find all the URLs on this website. But rather than making you wait for the whole tool output to finish in traditional Blue Peter fashion, here's one I ran earlier, and you can see I've just cut it from my file, but it's got a number of different directories. You can see there's an admin directory, an audio directory, a blog, CSS, but if we keep going down, you can see we've got a robots.txt file. That's important. Well, it's not important, but it's good to take note of. Robots.txt files are used to tell search engines which files or directories they don't want indexed. So for instance, if you had a login page or something with sensitive information in there that you don't want indexed on Google, you would pop the location of that file into your robot.txt file and it tells the search engine not to index it. So we'll have a look at that in a moment. You can also see though this WP links, and what WP is WordPress is a content management system built using PHP with a MySQL backend database. There is a lot of good tools out there that you can use to scan WordPress sites like WP Scan, but we're gonna have a poke around later and see what we can find. But looking through this list, there seems to be like quite a lot going on. We can go through it all. Got all your images there. I believe there's some video files and some audio files as well, but there's quite a lot that we can go through, so we need to sort of focus our efforts on the high sort of resource area, the high target areas. So if we bring up our browser again and have a look at that robots.txt file, shall we? Okay, so we see we've got a file called fsociety.dic and a key file. And the key file there, I believe there are 3 flags on here that we need to get. So there we go, there is the first flag. Brilliant. So the other file is this fsociety.dic. So we're just going to save the file in downloads. And then what we can do is we can just query that file and see what's in there. So if we do cat home Kali downloads fsociety.dic, you can see there it is a word list. So my initial thoughts is that we're going to use this word list to try and break into the admin areas of the site. So if we go and take a look at the admin areas, there was that /admin area, but this is a bit odd. It seems to just keep redirecting us, but we know there's a WordPress site, or it's powered by WordPress. So what we can do is we can go, this takes us to a WordPress page with a username and password. Now, one thing we test in web applications is, first of all, we test default creds to see if they work, just things like admin. But also, notice this error message at the top. It says error, invalid username. It doesn't say invalid credentials or anything like that. It says specifically invalid username. Now, this brings up a question. So if I had a correct username but an incorrect password, would it tell me that my password is incorrect? Or would it just say user is incorrect still? The reason why is if there's different messages based on what you supply to it and what's correct, then you can enumerate correct users. So if you've got an incorrect user and it tells you it's an invalid username, fine. But if you've got a correct user and an invalid password and it tells you it's an invalid password but the username's fine, then you can determine what the valid users are. So with that in mind, I'm going to use a tool called Burp Suite, which is a web application proxy that's used for testing the security of web applications. And what you can do is first of all, let's close down my browser because Burp has its own browser built in. It's a version of Chromium, which is good. And let's pop the URL in, but we need to take let's take intercept off for a moment to let it load, and let's populate the credentials with test and test. I'm sure you can already see what the username is. I've already given it away, but this is the method I used to get there. So if we go back to Burp and turn intercept on and then click login, what will happen is you'll capture the post request to login.php with the host number, the cookie, but you'll also get the credentials, and then what you can do is you can send those to intruder. Then when in intruder, what intruder is it allows you to modify the request and replace some of the parameters with actual variables so you can repeat them over and over again, essentially brute forcing it. So if we clear all the parameters straight away, and I just want to add a variable to log, which is going to be the username, and then in payloads I'm going to load the fsociety.dictionary file and open that, and it may take a while, but there you can see it's now loaded in. Now I'm going to start the attack. Again, because I'm using the community version, it's significantly slower, but if we watch what happens when it finds the correct username, we should be able to notice it based on the responses that come back from the server. See, I can spot it right there. So you can see that all of the lengths of the responses are 4026, 4026, except for Elliot, which is 4077. And the reason why is probably because the error message is different. Can we render that? Is that going to render quickly? So there we go. So you can see there the password you entered for the username Elliot is incorrect, but it's not telling us that Elliot's incorrect. If we go to 4026 and render that instead, it just says invalid username. And the same with styles, invalid username. But it's identified that Elliot is the correct user, so now we can go ahead and try to brute force the password for Elliot. Here's a bit of a tip before we start the brute force though. The file that we've got, the dictionary, does contain duplicates. So what you can do is you can do sort and then find the file name. So it's in home, Kali, downloads, fsociety.dic, and then you can sort it by unique characters and output it into its own file called test.txt or whatever it is you want to call it. So I'm just going to call it fsociety2.txt, and hopefully that's going to be in my tool output now, and there you can see it's fsociety2.txt. So now we're going to try to brute force the password for the WordPress, and I thought I'd use a different tool for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a tool called Hydra, THC Hydra, and this is a program that will brute force logins and attempt to find the correct login. It works with SSH, RDP, it works with a lot of services and web services, but the syntax can be quite complicated. Hopefully I've still got it saved somewhere. Right. So I'm going to have to change it now based on the word list. So it's going to be a lowercase l at the start. .txt. So this is the syntax. Sudo hydra vv. That's asking it to be verbose, so it's going to show every attempt that we make. Then it's saying hyphen lowercase l Elliot. However, if we wanted to specify the name from a word list, we would use an uppercase L, as you can see with the P. P is for password, and I'm specifying that I want it to use the word list fsociety2.txt. Then we've got the host. So this is the host of the target. This is the IP address of the target we want to attack, and we're saying the type of attack we're going to do is a HTTP post form. So it's going to know, instead of a GET request or an RDP or an SSH attack, we're doing a HTTP post attack on the URL wplogin.php, where the first parameter is log. So if you remember back to when we captured it with burp, the first parameter was log, and that's where you specified the username. So as you can see that, it's pulling that from the user parameter at the start, and pwd, which was the password parameter, was saying is pass, and then it's saying wp submit equals log, and then it's doing a check to see whether that is correct or not. So it's looking for the message to see whether it was a correct password or not. Then if we hit return on that and pop in our password, it will start brute forcing it bit by bit. The reason why I didn't use burp suite for this is because it would have took forever. Now this is still going to take a long time, but I believe I have one I did earlier. So if we tail hydra3.txt, we should see there, after 5,660 attempts, we got the correct password of ER280652. So if we bring up our web browser again now, and we head to that address, and we go to /wp login.php, and we type in Elliot, we should be able to log in now with this password here. And there we are, we're now inside WordPress. So now that we're inside WordPress, what can we do? Well, we could have a look around, we could look at the users, or we can just try and grab a shell right away. And one of the easiest ways to do this in WordPress is to go into the appearance, jump into your editor, and grab the 404 template, and right at the top of it, you're going to drop some PHP code that would allow you to spawn a shell. Paste it in the top, and as you can see there, it's executing bin bash, so bash. Then it's telling it to create a connection to 192.168.56.102 on port 443. And we're going to save that in the 404 template. And the reason why we use the 404 template is just because it's easy. So if I go down here and update the file, that's now saved. Now what we need to do is we need to create a listener on our side so that when we trick it into connecting back to us, there's something listening for the connection. So all we do is we use our tool called netcat, and we do sudo nc-listen verbose port 443. I think that's what it stands for, I could be wrong, but you should see we're now listening on port 443. So how do we get it to trigger? Well, it's quite simple really. We get the URL, we bring it open in another tab here, and then we just go blah. And what that should do is, because this page doesn't exist, it's now going to trigger a 404 page, which gets us into this bit here. So we can have a look around as well, and we can see all the files there. What we could do as well is if we go in, if we cat wp-config.php, we've got the database details here as well. So FTP user, FTP password, we've got a lot of information here. Define auth key, so you got DB name, Bitnami WordPress, DB user, DB password. So we could do a lot with this, but I don't think this is the path it wants us to go. If we look in ls home, we can see that we have another user called robot. So if we do ls home robot, we can see that we've got two files there. So if we just add a few arguments onto our list a little bit more, home robot, what you should be able to see is that the actual key that we want only is accessible as read via the owner. However, we can read this password.raw.md5 file. So let's try and have a look at that. Cat home cat tab complete robot password.raw-md5, and you can see there we actually have an MD5 hash for the user robot. Now I tried to crack this using John the Ripper and hashcat, using the word list that was provided for the fsociety.dict file, but that didn't work, unfortunately. What we can do though is if we head over to crackstation.net, and yes, I'm trying to find pictures for the thumbnail, and when we pop that into the crackstation.net and click crack hashes, we get ABCDEFG. So yeah, we get the alphabet, and that's the password for Mr. Robot. Now if we try and sue to robot, we should get an error. Yep, so it must be run from a terminal. So in order to get around this, we need to spawn a PTY terminal or TTY terminal. There we go. So now that we've converted our terminal over, we should be able to sue to robot. When sue robot, and when it asks for the password, we should just be able to paste ABCDEFGHIJKLMNOP, and now we are robot. So we've changed the user over to robot, and we should be able to cd to home, and we should be able to cat out key -2 is tab gone complete, no, 2 of 3.txt, and now we have the file that we need to well, that's the second key. Now all we need to do is get the third key. But in order to get the third key, we need to find a way to escalate our privileges on the box. Now, one of the most common methods of doing this is to find a file with an SUID bit set that you can run, which has some way to escape to the root user. And we can find files with the SUID bit set by running find /-permissions /4000 -type f to say file, and then we want to send our output to temp. And what that does is that goes through and finds all the files with the SUID bit set. Now we can look through all these files on and try to find ways to exploit them. So if I just bring up another browser over here, and what this does is it shows you sort of ways that binaries can be hacked or bypassed in order to escape them. So for instance, you could look for something like ping, ping 3. Okay, we got umount. Okay, we got mount. Now there are some on here which do have permissions to elevate you, but the one we're looking for is mmap, because you can see there we have a program, we have mmap available to us, and then there's this simple escape where you have to do --interactive, and then it spawns its own mmap help shell, and then you do !sh, and it just elevates you to root. So we're going to try that now. So we're going to go mmap --interactive, and then all we're going to do is we're going to do !sh, and then if we do who am I, we are now root, and the final key is if we go to root, we can see that the final key is there. We can cut that out, 3 of 3.txt. Sorry, my typing is awful today. And that's the last key, and that's the box owned. When now root, we can do what we want on the system, enable SSH and log in the easy way, but that's it. So we started off with some basic enumeration, we found a website, we found the word list, and that's, you know, that's not out of the ordinary. You could set up responder on a network to capture password hashes, or you can do open source intelligence gathering and find usernames through LinkedIn or something like that using the harvester. So it's not out of the realms of possibility. We found those usernames, we enumerated the correct users through an overly informative login page on the WordPress that told us when we had the correct username. We then used the correct username in combination with Hydra to brute force the password, which got us into WordPress. Then once we were in WordPress, we pasted a shell into the 404 page so that anytime we visited a page that didn't exist, it spawned a shell and sent it back to our local machine. Once we were on there on the terminal, we found a password hash in a users directory called robot. We got the password hash, we cracked it online to find out that it was the alphabet, and then we switched user to robot, but not before switching our shell to a TTY shell. And finally, we used a GTFO bin because the SUID bit was set on the mmap program. I may be doing a terrible job of explaining this, but that allowed us to use the mmap interactive terminal to escape to root and capture the final key. This box is a lot of fun, and again, it's the whole Mr. Robot theme of it's brilliant, as the show is very dear to me. I do love that show. But I hope you enjoyed it. Do give it a go. You know, give a thumbs up to the creator of the box. The effort that's gone into it is great, like all the boxes on VulnHub. But anyway, I hope you liked it. If you do, give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe. Leave me a comment. I'll try and say hello when I can. But yeah, I'll see you next time. Kind regards.